So getting into the details of the different functional units of the nervous system, we know that we have the neuron as the basic functional unit of the nervous system. Basically, that means that it is responsible for carrying the messages away or to the nervous system as well. Now, a generalized design of a nerve cell or a neuron, it consists of a cell body, which is also known as the soma, and the dendrites that are basically small dendrites or projections that are coming out of the cell body. And then we have a nucleus out here, and then we have a projection which is longer than the dendritic projections, which is known as the axon, which is responsible for the saltatory conduction of the electrical impulses which is being carried out by the neurons. This axon has a covering which is known as the myelin sheaths that are shown out here, and there are some gap junctions in between this myelin sheath. There is functional importance that is related to this gap junctions that are present in between, which is these junctions are known as the nodes of Ranvier over here. And then we have the axonal terminal ending. So this is the basic structure of a neuron or a nerve cell that we're looking at over here. Now, there are certain morphological classifications based on the structure of the neuron. For instance, we can divide it into a unipolar neuron. Then we have a bipolar neuron. Unipolar neuron, basically, we mean that there is a single axon that is related to it. On the other hand, bipolar neuron means that on two terminals, we have different axons that are coming out of it. Then we have a pseudo-unipolar neuron. Now, looking at a pseudo-unipolar neuron and looking at it on a broader view, you must think that this is a bipolar neuron, but it is a pseudo-unipolar neuron because only a single axon is coming out and is subdividing into two axons. So this subdivision that is why it is known as the pseudo-unipolar neuron, and this is the basic difference between the bipolar and the pseudo-unipolar neuron. And then we have the multipolar neurons, in which different axons and different dendrites, they are basically responsible for the communications in the surroundings. So usually the neurons are multipolar in nature. The majority of the neurons that we usually come across are multipolar in their nature. On the other hand, we can even divide on the basis of the axonal length. And upon this, we are basically dividing them into Golgi type 2 neurons, and we have the pyramidal cells. They are quite stellate kind of, and they have axonal length which is shorter than the Golgi type 2 neurons, and that is why they are more responsible for the relaying of information rather than carrying or sending messages away from the organ or to the organs. Then we have the Golgi type 2 neurons. So depending upon the axonal lengths, we can even divide them or classify them. Then we have a functional classification. So it can be a lower motor neuron in which the messages are being carried from the spinal cord to the effector organ. It can be a pyramidal cell neuron which is just present in the cerebral cortex and is responsible for relaying information within the cortex. So it doesn't take out information from the cortex to the outer regions. It is just present inside, and it has axonal lengths even not that long as compared to the lower motor neurons. Then we have the Purkinje neurons, which are present in the cerebellar cortex. And then we have the stellate cell neurons. Again, they are present in the cerebellar cortex. And then we have the granule cell cerebellar cortical neurons. So depending upon the different regions in which they are present, they are performing the different functions. And even their axonal lengths differ when we compare them. Synapses are basically when two neurons, there is a junction between them, and these are known as the synaptic junctions. Now, the transport of materials or the transport of the messages takes place in certain ways at these synaptic junctions, and upon that, specific types of processes that take place. We divide these synapses into either electrical synapses, in which there is an electrical conduction between two adjacent neurons, or either it can be chemical synapses in which the neurotransmitters, they take information from one neuron to the other. For instance, acetylcholine, and there are a lot of other neurotransmitters that are present in the nervous system. And we'd be going through the details whether they can be excitatory as well as they can be inhibitory in their nature. So if there is a neurotransmitter involved, we usually refer to it as a chemical synapse. And if there is just an electrical conduction, we usually refer to it as a electrical synapse that is present. The neurotransmitters are specific chemical substances, and their uptake or their release is basically responsible for sending the messages towards even the effector organs and for the performance of the effector organs in a particular way, depending upon which organ we are talking about and which effector organ is particularly involved in a particular neuron, and what are the target organs for a particular cranial nerve, for instance. Now we can basically subdivide and classify neurotransmitters into either the excitatory form, mainly or namely we have the acetylcholine, glutamate, aspartate, dopamine, noradrenaline, serotonin. These are all excitatory in their nature. We have histamine, which is again excitatory in its nature. On the other hand, apart from these excitatory neurotransmitters, we have inhibitory neurotransmitters as well. Mainly we have the GABA, which is the gamma aminobutyric acid, which is present. And then we have glycine, which is again inhibitory in its nature. So as even the name is indicated, it can basically excite neurons or the effector organs, or either it can cause the inhibition of the effector organs, depending upon that we have basically named them accordingly or classified them accordingly. To remember the different classifications of the neurotransmitters, there is a mnemonic that will be basically quite helpful in remembering the classification of neurotransmitters. SNAGD is basically the complete mnemonic, and when we basically look at it into bits, S basically stands for serotonin. Then we have the N, which stands for noradrenaline. We have an A, which is basically standing for the acetylcholine or aspartate in general. We have a G, which is referring to the GABA and glycine, which are the inhibitory neurons mainly. And then we have the glutamate. This is another G. We have two Gs, so basically there it stands for an inhibitory and the excitatory neuron separately. And then we have endorphin, which is basically standing for the E in the word SNAGD, and we have D, which is standing for the dopamine. So it will help you remember the different neurotransmitters or the major neurotransmitters that are present in our nervous system, either peripheral or central nervous system. And then again, you have to remember that the different effector organs are affected in different ways. The stimulation that we even went through, the parasympathetics and the sympathetics, there is going to be a release of all of these different neurotransmitters that is going to help out in carrying the messages to and from to the central nervous system.